Alright guys, so one of the great debates I always see is between carburation and fuel injection fuel tanks. A lot of people are either fuel injected, they want to go back to carburation, or they're carbureted and want to go to fuel injection, whether it's OEM or aftermarket. Now, thankfully, because I have both generations or the halves of the Foxbody, I've got a 79 to 86, which was carbureted until 86 when it changed to CFI, fuel injection, and then I have a fuel injection vehicle. I have both fuel tanks here, and today let's decide and show what is different between a fuel injection tank and a carbureted tank. Alright, so I've got myself a small table set up, and we're going to first look at the carbureted fuel tank. Now this is off a 1980 4-cylinder car, so it'll be a pretty basic piece. So on the passenger side, you're obviously going to have your fuel filler. Now, this does not have a locking fuel cap. It's very simple. Goes into a standard steel fuel neck. You've got your fuel base housing that goes on the inside of the car, and then this will trap any, I guess it goes this way, but any fuel that goes in here, it's got a drain tube that's going to come out. Now on the top of the fuel tank itself, you'll notice it's going to have a vent breather. Now this is just atmosphere, and this can go to a canister or just to atmosphere to go out. On the bottom of the tank, or should I say on the top over here, there's nothing. There's nothing there. There's no fuel sender or anything else like you would on a fuel injection. If you notice on the front of the fuel here, you've got your in and outs here, and then you've got your two-prong plug, which is your fuel sender. So let me take this apart and show you what's inside the fuel tank on the breather, which is up here, and the fuel sender and the lines here. Okay, so on the top, what you're going to find is a plastic valve. So inside the tank, you're going to have a rubber grommet, and on the piece, you're going to have your valve. And it's a one-way valve. You can kind of hear it. And of course, if it's in good shape, it will click like a PCV valve. But really, it's a one-way valve meant to gas out and not really gas in. But this one seems to be in pretty good shape for a 1980. And I'll just go ahead and put it back since I'm not keeping the tank anyway. Alright, so now on the inside of the fuel tank, I've flipped it over, and this has got a seal. So it's basically a twisting lock, and it has 3 tabs on it. Take a hammer and a screwdriver or a chisel or a driver or whatever you want to do, and you're just going to tap it counterclockwise, lefty-loosey, and it will pop loose. Now on the underside of the flange, it's going to have an O-ring just like this, and then you're going to have your pickup. So one of these lines is for your pickup on the end. Is where it sucks in the fuel, comes out, and then you've got a return coming in there, just like this. So it goes in or out. Now on the end, you've obviously got your fuel sender here, which is a float, just kind of like a plastic piece. Runs up to an arm, goes to a potentiometer here, and it has one lead going there. Now this is probably a positive or a ground or something of a resistance going that way, which sends out to there, and then you've got your 2-prong connection there. So pretty simple stuff on the old carbureted. It's either an in or an out on the fuel, and then pretty simple of telling it probably a resistance going through it. So signal going in goes through a resistance, signal coming out goes to your fuel sender, tells you where and how much fuel you have. Alright, so now with the fuel injection tank set up on the table, let's look at the differences between it. Now, if you notice on the side over here, that would be, this is the driver's side. One thing you'll notice is there is a connection here. Now, this connection goes up to the plug, where if you remember on the carbureted, it was on the front. If I show you on the front, there's nothing there. So that is one major change. Now, on the top itself, you're going to have a vent. This vent obviously is going to go to atmosphere, but mostly on the fuel injection cars, they had emission standards that weren't present in the 80, or they were more stringent than the 80. So this would then run to a hose going all the way up to the engine bay for the canister. Now you still got the same fuel filler neck on the side, but this one does have a locking gas cap, a little bit different. obviously, if I take it off and show you, a little bit different design. This one's a vented one there, plastic versus the steel, which is pretty simple to go in. Same filler neck. The head itself is going to be a little bit different going in the side. Now also on the top, one thing you'll notice is where on the carbureted they came out the front, this is on the top. So these are your fuel lines in and out going in, and then you've also got another plug. So let's take these plugs off and get these pieces out and show you what is in each of these connections. Alright, so now this is the sender unit for the fuel level on the fuel injected. So what you'll notice is it's much shorter here, similar float to what you had before, and also a one-wire potentiometer coming into the plug itself. So again, this is going to have a locking ring on top. You can just take a hammer and a screwdriver or something just to drive it counterclockwise, and then this will just kind of wiggle and jiggle and come right out. So you notice this is not similar, as it doesn't pick up fuel on the end. That is where your other line comes in, because there's actually a electric pump in there. So this is just for fuel level. Very simple. One wire in, one wire out, and this is just a potentiometer, which is basically a variable resistor based on this position. So one wire goes in with power, goes through basically a variable resistor, then comes one wire out, and that wire goes then to your gauge to tell you, hey, I'm full, or man, we need to get some gas. Alright, so now I've got the other piece out. Same thing, it's going to be a lock ring. You're going to turn it to the counterclockwise direction, lefty-loosey, just using a hammer and a screwdriver, whatever you need to do. So once you take it out, you're going to be very careful. So you have electrical leads in here, which is a positive and negative. You're going to have a fuel pump. You're going to have the sock, which is basically where it sucks fuel through. And this is really a screen filter prior to this. And then a lot of times you'll have a fuel filter after that, which will catch more. But this will at least keep big things out of your fuel pump, which is going to be your cylinder here. Now, if you're going to change one of these eventually, which most of us do anyway because we're all upgrading it, a lot of times what you're going to do is add one of these either into like a 155 liter per hour or a 255, depending on what you need. But most time they will fit within the stock piece here. And you're going to have basically a fuel pump out, which is going to be this going out. And then you're going to have another one coming in, the return from the engine, coming through the lines, coming in the return. And this is just going to have basically a rubber piece on here, which helps kind of disperse it out rather than making it a stream coming out. Now I can tell you this one has been changed. The owner I got the 92 on, bought it from, he said he did put in an Edelbrock 155 liter, which was plenty for the 30-pound injectors that were in there, which definitely is the case. It did drive fine. So I know he replaced this, so obviously the worm gear clamp here and over here are replaced. He's got butt connectors in here, which is fine for the fuel tank itself. And then you've got the lines coming out. So while I'm going to do this, I'm going to replace this gasket here. This one crumbled as I took it out, so it's just a little rubber O-ring. But thankfully, the one from the 80 is the same, and it's actually in good shape. So I'm going to take it and swap it over so I have a good seal here. Now the sock itself, this looks, honestly looks pretty dirty, so I'll probably replace this before I put it back in the tank, back in the car itself, and clean up the tank. So the question always is, what fits and what doesn't? Well, you know that stuff from the 80 really isn't going to fit very well in the 92 or the later EFI generations because of the placement. It goes in the front of the tank, not even going to fit in there. Will anything from the EFI stuff go in the 80? No, not really. So the hard part is, what fits? Does the tank actually fit from the 92 to the 80 or the 80-92? Can you swap and switch around? Well, let's get a tape measure and find out. So we'll use a little bit of tape measure just to measure the overall dimensions, get a rough idea, are these the same or they're not. Oh. Rough that way. Oh. How about height? Okay, so with the trusty tape measure, I can tell you this much. EFI tank is roughly in the 42-inch wide range. Carburation, 37.5. Wow, that's how much wider the EFI tank is. Now, going fore aft, pretty close. They're both in the 18.5, 19-inch range. Looking at the side, this is in the, let's call it a 10 range to the top here, and looking about 5 inches from the lower self to the upper piece. Now, the width of it itself, I think I've heard may be a problem on a carbureted car. I may have to use a hammer to make it fit. So I definitely, since I'm going EFI, I definitely need to put this in there. Now there are fuel injection tanks that I think are made directly to go in a carbureted car, and you may want to go that route. But at least this today gives you a rough idea of what it takes or what the differences are to make them fit. Now, if you want to know what it takes to put an EFI, an OEM EFI tank, into a carbureted car, well, you're just going to have to stay tuned, because I'm going to make this fit into there, even if I have to beat it with a hammer, and I just might. So that's it for this time. Check out the channel, and guys, I'll mention this. If you notice in my toolboxes and everything else, they're pretty bare. I need some stickers. So if you guys want to be mentioned or featured on the channel in an upcoming episode where I do some mailer stuff, or if you have t-shirts for a business you'd like to see shown on my channel, and I do wear these exclusively when I'm in the garage for anybody that supports me, so obviously I've got a Team Z on today because they help me out. I will gladly accept your donations, no matter how ridiculous they are. Pink unicorns and rainbows if you are a business that supports those. So anyway, that's it. Check out my About page. It does have a mailing address to a post mailbox, a PMB, for myself. Send it to my name or to Basin Motorsports. Hopefully I'll get it. Either way, it's box 101. You can find the address there. So that's it for this time. Hopefully this answers your questions of what the differences are between fuel tanks to a carbureted to EFI, and will I fit and will I won't, and I'm going to use this to wiggle waggle a little bit more. See you next time.